I'm honored today to invite to our show an extremely well known, very distinguished commentator on world affairs, particularly as it relates to the part of the world which is in everybody's view right now, in everybody's concern right now. That is West Asia and the Middle East. My guest today, and my hope as a regular contributor to our show, is Pravin Sawhney. He is the editor of Force magazine. He is highly respected not only in India, in Pakistan, in across the Middle East, across China, across Russia, but in many parts of the world. And I am honored to have him here today on the show. Uh, Welcome, Parveen. Please go ahead and say what you believe would be something that our audiences would like to know about what it is that everybody is watching with bated breath in West Asia.
First of all, thank you very much, Zulfiqar, for inviting me to your show and for your kind introduction. Now, as far as the war in West Asia is concerned, I believe that the central objective today of the Americans is Strait of Hormuz. Because for the Americans, it is very necessary that the Strait of Hormuz it be what it was before it was closed down on March 2nd by the Iranians. Now, as far as Iran is concerned, I believe their central objective is see, in any case, the Strait of Hormuz is very much under their control. It is and it will remain under their control. We know it will remain under the administration of what the Iranians have created in consultation with Omanis, what is being called the Persian Gulf Strait Administration. Now, as far as the security is concerned of this entire waterway, which extends from Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman, which is roughly about 1,600 kilometers, this is the security is the responsibility of the IRGC Navy. And there should be no doubt, but as far as the Iranians are concerned, because please remember that in the month of March, Arakchi had publicly spoken after having visited Russia, where he met up with President Putin, and after that, he went to China. He met up his counterpart Wang He there. When he came back to Tehran, he spoke about, for the first time, a new post war regional framework. So, when we talk about that and in relation to the Strait of Hormuz, what this means is that, as I said, while the administration and the security remains with the coastal states, as far as the littoral states are concerned, which is the other GCC countries which use the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has said that they would consult them, they would take their advice in how to run the Strait of Hormuz. So, the point I'm making is that the Strait of Hormuz is very much under their control. Today, that is not their central objective. Today, the central objective of Iran is to get the US forces out of the GCC territories. And this is if you see the Islamabad MOU, this is point 4 of the Islamabad MOU that clearly mentions that the American forces should be removed from proximity of Iran within 30 days of signing of the final deal, which means that they are talking of 90 days from when the MOU was signed by the two sides, which is Iran and America, with Pakistani Prime Minister as the mediator. But the objective today of Iran is that the American forces should leave the GCC nations as soon as possible, and this is the reason that Abbas Araghchi recently spoke about the Iranian doctrine as being eye for eye. You hit us, we will hit your bases in the GCC countries. And that is precisely what they have been doing. Now, the purpose of this is very simple. At the heart of this whole issue is the petrodollars, the future of petrodollars on which the American empire rests. For example, if I may elaborate, Why the Americans want the Strait of Hormuz open is because they know if they are unable to provide the security and assured security to the GCC countries that yes, they will have a free passage through the Strait of Hormuz, it will be what it was before the war started. So it is critical for them to maintain, to get the GCC countries still to continue to trade in petrodollars. As far as the Iranians are concerned, as I said, if they can get the forces out of their proximity, the American forces in the GCC countries, then sooner rather than later, the GCC countries will come to the conclusion that there is no point in trading in dollars, the US dollars, what we call the petrodollars. So, in any case, Irakchi has gone still further in saying that he would be looking at the trade in yuan, in the Chinese yuan. Why in Chinese yuan? That is a different story. If you want, we can talk that also. But for your viewers, many who may not know the significance of this petrodollars, I would like to just very briefly point this out what it is all about. We know it was in 1974 that the Americans struck a deal with the Saudis, and as part of the deal, it was that the Saudis would sell their oil and their gas to the countries of the world in American dollars, and in return, the Americans would provide them security. This was the deal. A deal which was later also taken up by the other GCC countries as well as the OPEC countries. And as part of the deal, it was that whatever is the surplus with the GCC nations, the US dollars, they would invest in the American Treasury bonds, in their stock, American stock, as well as now in the artificial intelligence infrastructure that most of the GCC countries of the American companies they have on their soil. The data centers, for example, which have been made. So, this in brief was the petrodollar about America providing the security. Now, the point is if the GCC's countries finally come to the conclusion that the American bases are a big vulnerability on their soil, they need to move away, which in any case we are seeing happening. Because if you see in the last 2 3 days, what has happened is that the Americans have moved their military assets from Bahrain and Qatar to Jordan. And if I may digress here, the reason they have moved is because because their radars, their satellite communications, they were badly damaged. They are inoperable. This the Iranians had done in the 39-day initial air campaign. So they have moved it out from here. So what point I am making is that all this is happening, and the GCC countries, once they realize that the Strait of Hormuz is very much today not only under the control of the Iranians, also in the control of the Iranian allies, what is being called the resistant front or the Yemenis, which in any case have blocked now the passage of the Saudi ships through the Red Sea. So once they realize that, then as far as Iran is concerned, the GCC countries will be left with no choice but to stop doing the trade in petrodollars because it doesn't help them. And as far as Americans are concerned, that will be a very big trouble for them because they've been selling their debts to the countries that want oil and gas and other derivatives from the GCC countries uh, as part of their US Treasury bonds, which all these countries, especially in Asia, have been buying. Then they will have no need to buy all that. And today, if we see, because they've been able to deal in petrodollars, the American national debt today stands at $39 trillion, which is more than their GDP today, which stands at $32 trillion. So they are in big trouble because to even service this $39 trillion, they need $1 trillion every year. Now, if their economy destabilizes, which it will, if the petrodollar is over or slowly it gets over, that will seriously impact their military power, their power of projection across the globe that they do through their something like 780 military bases across the world in 19 nations. So, when we talk of the American empire, a country that believes in the balance of power politics, what we call the spheres of influence, geopolitics, for them, the two most important things are that the American dollar remain the reserve currency of the world and they be able to project military power. So all this will be in serious trouble. So what we are looking at in the years ahead and very soon perhaps the decline of the American empire, which will shake up not only all the other theaters which have been uh, active in the world today, because one world order has broken down and the second world order is still taking shape. We are between two orders within their own hemisphere, which is Western Hemisphere. They will have a very big trouble. So this, in brief, is Zulfikar the way I read the whole situation.
Well, you could not have said it any. I could not have said it any better, and you have done an extraordinarily good job of explaining in very few words what really is behind the picture, and which is the preservation of the petrodollar. Uh, I have the dubious privilege of having been responsible for some aspects of setting up this architecture because this is something that I was uh, asked to do. At that time, I was too young and too foolish not to know what it is that I was doing. And now I'm embarrassed to admit that I was part of this that was set up. The Treasury Secretary, Bill Simon, who was responsible for this, used to go to the Middle East with Kissinger, tell the Saudis to raise the price of oil rather than reduce the price of oil, and come out and with a straight face say to the world that we are here to ask them to reduce the price of oil. And the reason was that the more money went into Saudi Arabia and other places, the more money came into the United States so that they could do what they were doing. Now, I mean, it's been a long time since I realized what was wrong with all that, and I got away from all that. And I now know very, very, very extremely clearly that this war is all about the preservation of the petrodollar. And I can say this very confidently, uh, perhaps more confidently than most people, because I have some perspective on it, that this is not going to happen. The US is not going to be able to keep the petrodollar going. This gig is up. This gig is completely up. Now, the most relevant thing today, I mean, I think everybody knows who is familiar with what has happened that petrodollar is not going to be not going to survive all this. You are a student and a scholar of military conflicts, and a very astute observer of that. And I've followed your work and admired your work for a long time, and so have millions of other people. And for the first time, thankfully, due to your kind decision to come on our show, many more millions will be hearing about it in 12 different languages. Tell me what now happens, because from what I know, and I have some unique perspective into this. The United States is stuck. There is no way the United States is going to emerge successful out of this and victorious. It is not going to emerge victorious out of this, regardless of what it does. And Iran is not going to let up. So, what happens next?
So you see, as far as Iran is concerned, Iran is very clear that it will not compromise on the 14-point MOU that it has signed with America on the 17th of June. Now, there are a lot of American analysts and very respected people, I respect them a lot, who keep saying that this MOU that was signed is a MOU which is one sided. This is a surrender document as far as America is concerned, which they are absolutely right. And the reason for that is we need to understand that this MOU that was signed, this was not a peacetime MOU. In a peacetime MOU, both the sides can win, it can be win win. This is a MOU as a consequence of the war, a war that Iran has won. And therefore, this is evidence. The MOU is the evidence that, as far as Iran is concerned, it still has military options, and President Trump simply does not have the military options. Otherwise, President Trump would not have himself signed on the MOU, which he has done. So, when I say that they don't have the military options, what this means is that what the Iranians have crafted over decades, it's an amazing military strategy. This is a military strategy, in my opinion. In the global schools of instructions, it will be understood, read, analyzed, threadbare for three reasons. Reason number one is that how can you do so well against the number one power in the world, the military power? You do so well with so less money. Please understand that as far as Iran is concerned, Iran's GDP today is 300 billion against America's GDP of 32 trillion. Then the other reason why it will be understood or read very closely is that how a nation, it makes use of its geography. And Iran's geography is amazing, something I wish President Trump had checked up with his central commander, the US CENTCOM commander who's been there looking at West Asia since decades. Perhaps he would have done a war appreciation and explained it to his commander in chief. We are talking about a country which is four times the size of Iraq. We are talking about a country which has mountains, which has forests, and which is not totally dependent on power. You see, it has decentralized power. It is not totally dependent on desalination plant. It has rivers. It has so many things. Geography is important. And the third important element, what will be seen is that when a country fights for the survival, and civilizational states, they fight for survival. When they say that so and so country is existential threat, they fight. So, this is the third thing that should always be kept in mind, which is why I always tell even my students here at my small research institute that the first thing you should try and understand about the enemy is its civilization. Where is the enemy coming from? What is the history? What is the culture? Who are these people? When you understand that, you will understand the will to fight. Having made these preliminary remarks, now let me make a couple of points about how amazing military strategy they have built. The first is that they correctly identified that the center of gravity of this war, which will impact the global economy, the global energy, is the Strait of Hormuz. So that was always the center of gravity, something that the Americans knew, but President Trump did not take heed to this. Why I say they knew is because if you see President Trump's own national security strategy that came out from the White House in December 2025, it clearly says that the outright enemy, adversary of America is Iran, and it is absolutely necessary for America to keep the Strait of Hormuz clear. It should be open. So, the second point I want to make about Iran's strategy is that they identified the importance of the American bases on GCC soil, which in military terms it would be called the operational level of war, where a regional decision is taken. And that is precisely what is happening when the Iranians talk about tit for tat. What they are trying to do is remove the American from the GCC bases, and we've seen that happening. They moved it to places like Jordan because they simply do not have the radars and the satellite communications either on Qatar or there in Bahrain. Qatar, as you know, is the forward headquarters of Central Command, and it is the biggest air base of the Americans, where they have something like 10,000 troops, and Bahrain is the headquarters of the fifth Fleet of the Americans. So they identified this correct. The third element I would say is decentralization of command. There was no unity of command at all, something that Netanyahu was able to convince Trump in believing that if we kill the top leadership, one, two, three tier leadership of Iran, then America could do a Venezuela on Iran, that America could own the Iranian oil. So they had already learned the lessons long back, a lesson that was reinforced to the Iranians in the 12-day war that happened in 2025. And as a consequence of that, what they had was decentralization of command, what I call not the unity of command, but the unity of effort. Where the effort is coordinated, all the elements of the effort, what we call the resistant front, the Hamas, the Yemenis, the Hezbollah, the Iraqi militia, all they know exactly what is to be done, and they are coordinating their actions with Iran. Then the next element of their military strategy is going underground. See, the Iranians certainly have borne a lot of pain because of the killings of their civilians, because of their civil infrastructure, houses. But as far as their military capabilities are concerned, everything is underground. There's hardly anything which is there on the surface. And they have released visuals also of the missile cities. Similarly, when we talk of the Strait of Hormuz, there is so much of military capabilities under the IRGC Navy that they have put there, that it is amazing, and this takes decades to do. They have tunnels there, they have mines of different kinds, they have standard mines, they have smart mines, then they have the fast craft boats they have, which we have seen in action, which can fire the missiles. Then we haven't yet seen their midget submarines that they acquired from North Korea, and which are ideal for the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf, which can fire both the torpedo and the missiles. Then they have got anti-ship cruise missiles. So the point I'm making is they have just too much of capability, and there is no way that the Americans will ever get hold of the Strait of Hormuz. So everything is underground. They have underground indigenous capabilities to make missiles, to make drones. They have decoy drones, they have jet powered drones. Then the next element is that today we are talking of a multipolar world. It is not a unipolar world at all. In this multipolar world, there are three great powers, which is America, China, and Russia. And both China and Russia, they are completely aligned today with Iran. Iran is member of BRICS, Iran is member of ASEO. And as far as the Russians are concerned, they have a straight route through the Caspian Sea from Russia coming to Iran. And as far as the Chinese are concerned, Chinese, as you are aware, in the month of May, they operationalized the rail link from China cutting through three Central Asian republics and coming on to Iran, absolutely secure, some 10,400 kilometers. So the point is that when any commercial ship of Russians or the rails which are of the wagons are Chinese are concerned, what they are carrying in a multipolar world, the Americans will not hit them. They dare not hit the assets of the Russians or the Chinese. Then we are talking about, everybody today, if you see all the reports in the Western press, they are talking about the accuracy of the missiles and the drones of the Iranians. Where have they come from? They have come from because Iran was intelligent. See, it makes a lot of difference, Zulfikar, when you have people who are intelligent, who are wise, who are educated. No, it makes a lot of difference.
Of course,
Lot
of
of
course, of course, Pravin. You will never, never, ever get an argument from me on that. Nobody will argue that.
So Iran is a country which has educated people. And so what the Iranians did was they learned the lesson of the 12-day war. And in January this year, many in the West are not even aware that they shifted from the GPS to the BeiDou 3 system, the satellite constellation of China, which is far more advanced. I won't go in the details of this, but it is so advanced that it has a perpetual see. It can see round the clock. Anything that is happening, the Iranians know what's going on in the entire theater, the West Asia. And then it has the part of the Beidou 3, which is advanced, much advanced than the GPS, is what is called the Yagon augmentation satellites in the low Earth orbit. These satellites are operating between 600 to 1,200 kilometers, and this is what provides the accuracy to the Iranian missiles. And today, Iran has the capability, when you look at the map, they can cover the entire Mediterranean Sea. They can hit as far as Digo Garcia in the Indian Ocean, which is 4,000 kilometers away from Iran. So, the point I'm making is that if Iranians today decide to go for an all out war, their military options are that the aircraft carrier, if there is any of the Americans or their large ships, they are vulnerable targets. Think of a situation where three of the ships or two of the American ships, they are hit by the Iranian missiles. And now I'm talking of missiles which are hypersonic missiles. I'm talking of missiles with speeds of more than 5 Mach. Mach is the speed of sound. We are talking of 6, 7, 8 Mach. And then we are talking of hypersonic. What that means is they maneuver until they are very close to the target. The interceptors don't know what to do and where to look for the missile that is coming. So they will have a sure hit. And where have they got all this? From China and Russia. Russia, these are the only two countries, by the way, which have operational hypersonic missiles the Americans still don't have. It is first the Russians who got the hypersonic missiles. They helped the Chinese, and the Iranians have been helped by both countries. So, when we look at this entire gamut of things, it becomes very clear to us that they are intelligent people. And why I'm saying intelligent is, what is it that the Iranians are trying to do? Let's understand that. Iranians are doing what I call passive offense. They are not going all out, they are simply playing tit for tat because their focus is on diplomacy. Why diplomacy? For two reasons. One is they understand this is their geography. The more destruction happens on their soil, on the GCC countries, it is West Asia that will suffer, the entire region will suffer. The Americans will just pack their bags and leave. And the second is if they have to build a regional framework, then they have to make sure that the diplomacy takes precedence. And this is precisely the reason that a lot of emphasis has been put on diplomacy by Iran. And we find Arakchi, he is not only interacting with the regional countries, he is also interacting with the two great powers, China and Russia, constantly. And here I must add a word for Pakistan, which is doing an absolute brilliant job. There is no doubt about it, what the Pakistanis are doing. And this is the reason, the evidence of the job that they are doing is that the Iranians have called their MOU Islamabad MOU. And today, Pakistan is in a very good situation. But this is something that you haven't asked me. But as far as this war is going, so it is President Trump who has to decide what he wants to do next. The Iranians are prepared. Time is on Iran's side. Time is not on President Trump's side because please remember, with each passing day, America's credibility and its stature as a great power, it is declining. Let's also remember, with each passing day, all the things that President Trump wanted to do, which is part of his national security strategy, which is giving number one priority to Western Hemisphere. Because if Western Hemisphere is not secure, there is no way that MAGA can happen, which is Make America Great Again, which is his foreign policy, that I want to make America once again the number one country in the world, which of course won't happen. So, Western Hemisphere, there are a lot of military issues, there are a lot of security issues. He simply cannot attend to all that. So, the point I'm making is time is on Iran's side, Iran has the capabilities, and there is no way that Iran will compromise. I don't see that happening at all. But yes, it is a certainty that, as I said, Iran is a country which is looking to preserve the geography, which wants to have a regional framework. So, if the Americans at any stage decide to come back on the MOU, which will not be compromised or diluted, I don't think that will happen. They will be willing to do that despite the fact that they do not trust America at all, and they have no reasons to trust America. America is not trustworthy at all. This is, Zulfikar, in brief, about the military aspects.
Parveen, again, I greatly admire the depth of your analysis, and I'm honored that you are here, and our audiences all over the world will benefit from everything that you have said. Uh, I would like to add that I have some insight into what is going on in Pakistan because of my own background, even though I have lived in this country since I was 17 years old. Came here as a very young freshman at the university here in California. And I have observed and watched everything that has gone on. And I've had the privilege of advising the government of Pakistan on many, many occasions, which is one of the reasons I have these contacts. And my insight is, as you have said, Pakistan continues to play as an important role as possible in trying to bring two sides together. From what we know, Pakistan was approached by President Trump, Asim Munir in particular, that he wanted an off ramp. An off ramp was provided to him by Asim Munir, not right away, but after a few days. And the off ramp was, okay, are you willing to come back to the MOU? Not renegotiate, not go back and discuss terms, but are you willing to execute the things that you already agreed to do? And after maybe 7 days of intensive effort, uh, the answer from Trump was no. The answer from Trump was no, and the military movements on the ground were to move everything towards Israel and Jordan. And from what I have heard from my contacts in Iran, is that they are waiting for the United States and Israel to execute their final blow. They think they have one more shot left, and Iran is willing to absorb that. And then Iran has its own one more shock after that. And that will be devastating. This is as recent, this intelligence is as recent as maybe a few hours ago, that Iran is not willing to compromise in any manner on any of the principles that have already been decided on the MOU, on which the President of the United States has signed in Versailles, and President Pezeshkian have signed. Prime Minister Sharif has been a witness to that, and they just do not want to renegotiate that. And in fact, what they say, okay, if you are willing to come back, you have to start performing right away, not tomorrow, but right away. And they know this is not going to happen. So my question to you is what you already partially answered. What is Trump going to do? What options does he have?
See, option, if he had any military option, because we are talking about a military campaign which has serious global economic implications, which has serious implications for the American empire itself in terms of petrodollars. We are talking of a military campaign. In the military campaign, as I said, President Trump simply has no options, military options. And Iranians have far too many military options. There are far too many assets of the Americans which are all over West Asia. So once we understand this point, then the thing is not only that, let me add another point here, that the way he ran the 39 days air campaign, President Trump, now there are reports which clearly says that the munition stockpiles of the US military, they have depleted sharply. We know that as far as interceptors are concerned, whether it is Patriots, whether it is THAAD, whether it is SAM 3, SAM 6, everything is in short supply, and these are those interceptors which will need some years to be made. So the stockpile will not be made, and it is heavily dependent, especially the guidance systems of these interceptors, on the rare earth elements which China controls. And Chinese, just to put it in a bit of a perspective, once again, on 16th of July in Shanghai, Ishaq Dar, Pakistan foreign minister, he was there for the World Artificial Intelligence Conference, which was uh, which was addressed by President Xi Jinping, and on the sidelines of that, he met Wang He, and Wang He once again told Ishaq Dar that you must make all the efforts to see that there is peace in West Asia. So that is conveying a lot. If they are conveying this to the Americans and it is being publicly released by the Chinese, what this means is they are also sending a message to the Americans that beware. Rare earth, we can always choke that off. You will have a big problem. So the point I'm making is Iran. So as far as President Trump is concerned, as I said, the evidence that he has signed the MOU, which respected American analysts are calling a compromised document, a surrender document of the Americans. So he simply has no military options today, and this is precisely his helplessness that he's doing all these things, that I will blow up their bridges, I'll blow up their power generation power plants. You see, knowing fully well that the Iranians will retaliate. They will retaliate on the GCC countries, and as I said, without saying so, they would have achieved the number four objective of the MOU, which is key for them: get the American forces away from the GCC countries, from the Iran's proximity. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, see, one thing which has not got much publicity or much reportage, in my assessment, is the fact that on the 17th of June, the MOU was signed. And on the 23rd of June, Iranian President Pezeshkian, he visited Pakistan. Now, this was his visit. The last one was in August of 2025. This visit was very significant. Why I'm saying it was significant is because it is President Pezeshkian who, in the month of March, he spoke about the regional framework and what the regional framework should have. He spoke about having an Islamic framework instead of an American framework. He spoke about having, as far as Strait of Hormuz is concerned, he wanted Strait of Hormuz where the coastal countries they control it, and the literate countries and international law should also be followed. He spoke about doing trade in local currency. He spoke about having regional answers to the regional problems. So the significance of that is the visit of President Pezeshkian to Pakistan on 23rd of June, that surely, amongst other things that was reported in the press, he has already realized that if there can be an anchor to the Islamic framework, it can be Pakistan in West Asia. And what he had realized at that time is actually happening on the ground. What we are seeing on the ground is that there is already reportage. Reports are coming that the type of defense agreement that the Pakistanis had with the Saudis, now even the Qataris want, the Kuwaitis want. So when you talk of security, that becomes a very important part of the Islamic framework. And then Pakistan has certain unique characteristics that no other country in the region has. And if I may just list three of them, one is that this is the only Muslim country with nuclear weapons. Then Pakistan has no diplomatic ties with Israel. Then, as far as the Americans are concerned, they have come to the conclusion that Pakistan has credible conventional capabilities. Now, the only problem which I keep emphasizing even in my videos, and I would certainly want to say on your show as well, is that Pakistan today has so many avenues open for improving their economy, for connectivity, for global geopolitical rise, regional rise, for being a very responsible member, acknowledged as a responsible member of the new world order. What they need to improve is their governance. That is one area where there is a problem that they have. So if I was to give advice which has not been sought at all, but for the good of Pakistan, it would be that the Pakistan army under present leadership, Field Marshal Asim Munir is doing a great job as far as foreign policy is concerned, as far as understanding global and regional geopolitics is concerned, as far as security is concerned. He knows what he is doing, and he's got his people who understand all this. So the Prime Minister should be focusing on governance. That is what is important. So that, in my mind, in my assessment, is coming in the way of Pakistan's rise. Otherwise, there was no reason why Minister Aurangzeb should have met up with the U.S. Scott Bessent and spoken about this, stabilization money of $10 billion over 5 years. There was no reason, but in any case, if they get it, then I think the prime minister should wholeheartedly focus on governance, and Pakistan's place as a major regional power is assured.
Well, thank you for that assessment, Pravin, and absolutely every opportunity I get, I'm privileged to have the ability to say a few words here and there within the government governing structure, and I do pass it on. And there are for everybody. There are people in Pakistan. Pakistan is a country of over 300 million people who are committed to that. Not everybody, but there are some people very much committed to it. Uh, in addition to President Pezeshkian visit, very very important visit, and also Arakshi's visit not long ago, as you may know, Parveen, I'm sure, in fact, you do know, Minister Momini has been in Pakistan for the last few days. In fact, he surprised everybody by extending his visit by another 2 days. He was in Lahore. He was talking to everybody, and from what I heard, he was very satisfied with his mission, which was not advertised to the world. And the mission was to make sure that the United States understood that Pakistan communicated that to Trump, that there will be no renegotiations. If you are going to come to the table with performance already underway. Exact words. Performance already underway. Now, you and I both know enough about Trump that we can reasonably say that that is not going to happen. So that only leaves one option, which is that Trump is going to lash out, and Iranians fully expect that to happen. This is unfortunate, but they do expect that to happen. But they're very extremely well prepared. In fact, some people that I was speaking with were shocked at how well prepared they were. I mean, I'm talking about military leadership. So that only leaves only the option of war on the table. Do you expect very, very significant kinetic activities?
Well, see, as far as I'm concerned, first of all, this point that you have made of the Iranian interior minister going there and meeting up with the leadership in Pakistan, see, this was indeed very important. I'm happy that you brought this up because, well, the report said that, they were discussing the border issue between the two countries. Of course, that is one issue they need to discuss. They have a lot of bilateral issues. But the key thing is that Iran, as I said, is very clear. Pakistan has an enormous big role to play, and the Trump administration and especially President Trump needs to talk regularly, and I'm sure he is doing it with the Pakistan Army chief. So it is important that this message be conveyed to the Americans through Pakistan, because a lot of American analysts have been talking about some sort of a compromise on the MOU. So
No
that
compromise.
compromise, no
No
compromise.
compromise.
See, because as I said, for the Look, what do the Iranians want? Iranian wants that this war does not happen once again. Iranian want that a regional framework to be created. In fact, let me go a step further. Iranian want that Israel's wing should be clipped. And how will that be clipped? Beyond the MOU, assuming that this MOU at some stage will culminate in the final deal, I am absolutely clear that the Iranians are looking for something more, something that they have already hinted. They'll be looking at Gaza and they'll be looking at the Palestine question. And here they'll be aided by the Chinese. Why Chinese? Because in 2023, please recall that Chinese in Beijing got 14 factions of the Palestine, including Fatah and Hamas, together in Beijing. They came together. And the Chinese, the news report or the brief said that they wanted to get all these people together under one cover. Why are they getting it undercover? Because today, in a multipolar world, this point has to be emphasized repeatedly that America is not the sole power on the earth today. In a multipolar world, there is possibility, there is hope like there never was of the Palestine question being seriously addressed. And this is the reason why, please also remember that on the 1st of July, what did President Trump do? In his first term in office, he spoke about shifting the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. But on 1st of July, he's actually done a deal with the Israelis to buy the land where the embassy is to be built, because this Palestinian state has to have the capital in East Jerusalem. This is what the global understanding is. So, what I'm saying is that every stage, President Trump is trying to see how he can uh, create problems for Iran. But I don't think that will work. In fact, let's go a step further. What is this talk about this 10-year, this nuclear deal that Trump wants to have with the South? No, it's a serious matter.
I
It's
understand, but
uh,
I'm sorry, and I'll explain why I
yeah,
smiled.
yeah,
I will
yeah.
explain that. Go ahead.
No, so you see, the whole idea is something that the Biden administration was trying to do for a different reason. They wanted the Saudis to come and sign the Abraham Accord. That was a different reason. His reason is you can't figure out. I mean, the Iranians are very clear. You will not be in their proximity. The Iranians are very clear that the Strait of Hormuz will be under their jurisdictions, under their security. Then what are you trying to do? So basically, he's trying to see that the regional framework does not work. And why I'm saying this, let me just make one more point here. There are a lot of people in the world, a lot of respected analysts who have been saying that look, Iran is just a screw away because it has already done 60% of enrichment and it has the technology know how. Of course, it has to have a nuclear weapon. Of course, it has all that. But my point all along was that it will not go for nuclear weapons, Iran. And the reason for that is very simple. If Iran and Arakchi and Pezeshkian, they're all talking about a regional framework, a regional, Islamic framework, then it has to be a partnership. If one country is seen as a hegemon, as a dominant power, so it will not work. Your regional framework will not work at all. And if they get the nuclear weapons, they will be the hegemon in the region. This was my argument, and this, in my assessment, is what President Trump is trying to scuttle. See, he has no options. He's just trying to see how to create some problems for the Iranians. He's simply frustrated and seeing as to how, if there is a possibility of reworking the MOU or having a new MOU, which as you also rightly pointed out, according to your sources, that the Iranians will not agree to.
Absolutely not agree to that, Praveen. And I want to just clarify why I was smiling. I have some knowledge about this deal, so-called deal, to build to provide enrichment of uranium and so forth. The last the United States has not built a nuclear reactor, maybe not more than two or three in the last 25 years. Their technology is really, really old and really outdated. This is nothing more than a bone that they have tried to throw down the Saudi lane to simply see whether or not that would somehow mollify them from their anger at all that is going to go on. And nothing is going to change events, facts on the ground. I have kept you longer than I thought I would. Your analysis always cuts to the bone, cuts to the facts. You add a very different, very enlightened perspective to what we talk about with other scholars on our show, and I'm truly honored to have you here, and I look forward to having you here again, same time next week. Hopefully, Trump doesn't blow up the world between now and then. Praveen, thank you so very much. Our guest all over the world. This is translated in 12 languages simultaneously. If you like what we do on this show, kindly subscribe, kindly hit the like button. And for those of you who have become paid members, if you are not, become a paid member. We will deliver at least once a week, sometimes more than once a week, this enlightened analysis directly into your mailbox. Thank you so much, Praveen. I look forward to seeing you, and I'll keep in touch. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much, Zulfikar, for having me on your show.
You are
Thanks a
very
lot,
welcome.
and bye bye.
Very,
Bye
very
bye.
welcome. I'm going to hit the stop already.